Hey you beautiful people, welcome back to a new video on our channel Read Travel Become. These days whenever people ask me what kind of books do you love to read, what are your favorite kind of books, without even thinking I reply my favorite books are biography books these days. Now there are two reasons to this. Not only they help me to learn something new and try thinking from a different perspective, but they make me develop a reading habit. They make me invested in that book. Whenever I'm in a reading slump, I pick up a biography book, because what happens is when I know that person, I want to know their story. I know some little things about that person. I know their mindset, their success metrics. But when I want to deep dive into their mindset, biography books help me with that. In this video, I'm going to suggest 5 biography books which you guys must read. All of these books are gold books. Now, this list is a curated list. Let me tell you how. I'm going to suggest 5 biography books, but from different areas, from different genres. The 5 areas which I have chosen is arts, science, spirituality, sports and leadership. In each section, I'm going to suggest 1 or 2 biographies which you can read. Some of them are my absolute favorites. So make sure you watch the video till the end. You may never know which thought or fact may resonate with you and change the course of your life. So let's get started. Okay, let's talk about the first section, which also happens to be one of my favorites, art. An artist's life. For those people who have been following me since quite some time know that I'm smitten with Van Gogh's work. You might have seen that Starry Night painting in many of my social media presence, and it's also there in my room right now in front of me. And I also have a small painting. It's there on my phone wallpaper and everywhere. Because that painting reminds me of art. That painting reminds me of how art is life. For me, it was very important for me to understand an artist's life and in what domain do they operate, because the life of an artist, the thinking of an artist is very, very different. They operate in a very magical zone, which is not very conventional zone. And the book which I'm going to suggest, there are actually 2 books which you can read in this space. The first book is Lust for Life, which is actually a biographical novel about Vincent van Gogh. So it's not exactly the true depiction of Vincent's life, but it's like a fictional biography, which is a very interesting proposition. A lot has already been said about Vincent van Gogh, that how he's one of the greatest painters who ever walked on earth. And it's very tormenting to hear about his life. He was suffering from depression, anxiety, a lot of these things, and art basically gave him life. Art basically made him believe in his own thoughts and mental, he was basically able to see clearly through his art. Painting made him feel alive. His eccentricities are talked about in this book, and it is very sad that even after he was dead for long, he was not very famous. He didn't even know that he would become one of the greatest painters. So yeah, you should definitely read Lust for Life to understand Vincent's life. You can also see a beautiful movie called Loving Vincent, which is a collection of his paintings. All of the frames of this movie is basically painted by professional artists, and they have put it together to make a totally motion picture. And the second book is Leonardo da Vinci's biography by Walter Isaacson. Now Walter Isaacson is one of the best biography writers. He's out there. I'm going to suggest one of his most famous work in the further list. You should definitely read Leonardo da Vinci, because he is the epitome of a creative soul. He was into engineering, anatomy, flights and painting and everything. He had his hands dipped in many buckets. So it's very interesting to know how this guy operated. For those guys who don't know, he is the one who has painted the very, very famous The Last Supper and Mona Lisa. Also, many of his works are based on engineering. It's a perfect blend of science and art. He's a perfect amalgamation of how science can be used to explain art, or art can be used to explain science. So if you are interested in this space, you should definitely read this book. It's very, very readable. You would want to know how this person thinks. He was very eccentric. He was very dark. He had different thoughts. So yeah, you should definitely pick up any of these books if you want to study more about the mindset of artists. The next section we are going to talk about is leadership. Leadership is a very, very important topic if you are in your 20s, because these stories will inspire you to shape your mindset to become a better leader. We are the future of tomorrow. We need to have a leadership mindset. And again, in this section, I have 2 books for you guys. These books have really, really helped me to, touch the nerve of leadership, how leadership works of big organizations. So the two books which I'm going to talk about are actually about leaders who have led these huge organizations. One is Apple and the other is Disney. So let's talk about Apple first. Obviously, the book I'm talking about is Steve Jobs, again by Walter Isaacson. It's one of the best biographies written. Period. You would be hooked onto this book from page one. It is a difficult read. It's not very easy to read, but it is interesting enough to keep you hooked. Now, obviously, they've talked about the life of Steve Jobs, but you already know the facts. You already know what he did and how impactful his innovations were in the tech space. But you don't know how his mind worked. How Steve Jobs was way ahead of his time. So to understand this, you can pick up this book. The writer has talked about his life from his early childhood till he introduced Macintosh and then Apple and everything. So all of these events will greatly inspire you, will help you if you are someone who likes to think out of the box. It will motivate you. There are some amazing quotes written in there which you can write it down in your diaries and on your wallpapers, on everything. It's a very readable book. And the next book is The Ride of a Lifetime, which is basically the biography of Robert Iger, who is the ex-CEO of Disney, who was the CEO of Disney. Now this book is a little laid back in its nature. It's not very pompous. It's not like celebrating the author's highs and success and lows and everything. It just talks about his life in a very simple way. He was a simple man, but his feat was extraordinary. To manage a company like Disney, acquiring so many companies together, and what goes on in his mind when there's an accident and when there's a downfall, the market crashes, how does he operate in those situations? I really like the narration in those pages. Disney has also acquired Marvel, so all the superheroes you see are all acquired by Disney. Disney owns everything. So it's interesting to know how this person manages such a huge company, and his writing is very simple. It's very easy to read and it's very likable. And look out for the part where he meets Steve Jobs. There's a very interesting conversation between these two people, so you would want to check that out. Next section is science, and the only book which comes to my mind when I talk about science and is the most interesting read of all of these books is Surely You're Joking, Mr. Feynman. Now, Richard Feynman was one of the greatest innovators and scientists. You call him theoretical physicist, you call him everything. It applies to him. He was way ahead of his time. If I have to put it in simple terms, imagine Rancho from Three Idiots, multiply his likeliness, multiply his likeness by 10 times. You would like Richard Feynman that much. He had an eccentric brain. It was full of pranks, tricks, and curiosity. The one thing which stands out in this book is the curiosity with which Richard P. Feynman viewed the world. The book is humorous. It's full of fun. He used to do these pranks all the time, and he used to always be in a fun mood, and he was always breaking down science into the simplest terms possible. He wanted science to be very easy and explainable. There's a very famous technique called the Feynman technique, which is basically when you're able to explain something to a person in the most simple terms, only then you would have understood that concept the best. So very enjoyable read. There are amazing stories and anecdotes which this guy had. Look out for his pranks, look out for his eccentric innovations, look out for his little tricks and tips and tricks which he used to jump around everywhere, talk in a very fun way. It's a lovely book. Basically, it's a very readable book, and I definitely recommend Richard P. Feynman's novel Surely You're Joking, Richard Feynman, if you are a science student. Even if you're not, you will understand everything and you would have a great time. Also, if you are on the topic of science, there's also one more book which has inspired me personally a lot. It's not very scientific, but The Life of Dr. APJ Abdul Kalam is definitely very sciencey. Both of these books, amazing, just too good. The next section which we are going to talk about is sports. Now, some people have already, I can guarantee, some people already know, the people who have been following me since quite some time know which book I'm going to talk about. They already know, I'm very sure. So yeah, you guys know which book I'm going to talk about. It's my favorite book. I have been promoting this book so much. All my friends, I've promoted this book, and everywhere I go I shout read this book, because this book literally changed my life. It was this book after which I was inspired to do something and push my boundaries and start something and just do it. So yeah, I'm talking about Shoe Dog, which is the story of Phil Knight. I've already talked about this book a lot. My core subscribers would kill me if I would again recommend this book. But yeah, Shoe Dog is worth reading, and that's why I recommend it so much, because it's the story of a normal person doing extraordinary things. So the other books which you are reading, you would feel like these people were gifted in some way. Let's say Steve Jobs, Da Vinci, these people had that knack of, having to do something great. But this person was very, very simple person. He was just, you can relate to this person a lot. He was just like us. He was making mistakes, and he was just going around with life, but he never gave up. Perseverance is what I learned from this book, that he never gave up. Very, very inspiring read. Definitely pick up Shoe Dog by Phil Knight. And the fifth and last section which we are going to talk about is spirituality. Now here, the book which I'm going to recommend is a very difficult book to read, I'll be honest. And even I am not in a position to fully comprehend what this book meant, what this book wanted to teach me, and what this book wanted others to know. The book is Autobiography of a Yogi. I have made a separate video on this topic. That's how much I was intrigued by what was written in this book. I'll tell you why should you read this book. This book will make you question your belief systems a lot. Everything in this book is not believable. You won't believe whatever is written in that book. But when you think in that direction, when you start thinking, you're channelizing your thoughts in a different direction, that is when you grow. That is when you challenge your mindset and your brain starts thinking in a different way. This is when you grow. That is why I'm recommending this book. So it's the collection of anecdotes, collection of different incidents which happened in the life of Paramahansa Yoganand, who has written this book. It's a very, very difficult read. Some of the words which are used in this book are, I have never heard those words, and it's also a good way to improve your vocabulary if you know these words. It took me a lot of time to read that book, and I still am not in a position to fully comprehend what this book meant. But yeah, only for the reason to challenge your belief systems, you can pick up this book. It's a different read, it's a refreshing read, and it's not very conventional in its spiritual way. It's not very conventional wisdom, it's an unconventional book. It is very interesting, it will keep you hooked. It is a fat book, but you can read it in parts. You can read the instances, you can read the small stories which he has shared. So yeah, that is why I recommend reading this book. Many people, like famous people, have changed their lives by following what was written in this book. So I'm yet to understand again what exactly this book meant, but you can definitely pick up, and do let me know in the comment section if you have a certain interpretation of what this book meant. I would love to know your thoughts on this. Okay, so that was the list, guys. I hope you pick up any of these books. All of these books are gold. They're just amazing. So let me know in the comment section if you have read any of these books. I hope you like these recommendations. Do like the video if you found any value in this content, and subscribe to my channel. We are a family of 50,000 now. I can't tell you how blessed I am, how grateful I am for this position. I'll always be making videos and trying to bring value to you guys and to the family which we have created. That's all for this video. See you in the next one. Bye bye.